This is your brain. This is your brain addicted to toxic relationships. And while it may look like a blob on a brain, it's actually revealing something shocking about why we're actually attracted to people who hurt us. Think Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. There's even a common name for this problem. But what's the actual brain science for why some people defy all common sense and get into these crappy relationships? Turns out, it may not be their fault. I did an enormous amount of research into this topic for this video, and it's something I've thought about pretty consistently for more than 5 years. So today we're going to answer possibly the most painful relationship question. Why do good people end up with toxic partners over and over again? But before we answer that, I want to show you what toxic actually looks like. I always imagined myself as a nice guy, caring, sensitive, introspective, emotionally available, even if I was a bit blind to my own red flags. I'll show you those in a minute. I remember always wanting safe, warm, reciprocal love, like this. The one. I craved love, even. And in general, I surrounded myself with safe, kind, gentle people. Still do. But what I didn't know was there was a huge flaw in my master plan for having a peaceful, happy, loving future. We'll get to that in a minute, too. But first, we all know what toxic behavior looks like, right? Well, the overt kind, at least. Fighting, screaming, lying, cheating, stealing. But what if that's just the tip of the iceberg? Check this list out. It's long. This is what toxic can look like. Using threats, intimidation, anger when being held accountable, Darvo, look that one up. Isolates people from support systems, making things all about them, playing the victim, violating boundaries repeatedly, being high conflict, creating drama, gaslighting, manipulation, passive aggression, using guilt and shame, emotional blackmail, silent treatment, stonewalling, triangulation, belittling, being dismissive, critical, dominating conversations, being self-centered, projecting, being judgmental, gossiping, negative, refusing responsibility, no genuine apologies. Double standards, keeping score, hoovering when you're finally exhausted, love bombing then withdrawing affection, being selectively supportive to manipulate, dishonesty, hiding their true feelings and contempt, needs things to be their own way, having erratic emotions, hypersensitive, impulsivity, overly needy, complaining, craving adoration, sympathy, and attention, needing supply. Whoa, it's a little more complicated than we thought, right? Some of those can be really subtle, but we can basically all feel toxic behavior when it happens. It's really just behavior that's unkind, self-serving, dominating, and disregards the other person. It's any behavior that violates love. Psychologist Alfred Adler says, remember that this person is striving to assert his superiority, and you must deal with him from that point of view. Now think about having to interact with these people, how it makes us feel. Exhausted, really, confused, upset, irritated, and maybe small and ashamed, fearful, obligated, and maybe guilty. And I used to wonder, too, if it's just men and psychopathic prisoners that are this bad. Is it? Well, surprisingly, no. Women with these traits are statistically more covert, though, meaning they hide these traits in public. Men tend to be more overt. They often behave the same in public as at home, but not always. Based on studies done in 2021, it was projected that only 6% more women are affected by domestic violence than men. That means that even though women being victims of male domestic violence is the bigger conversation socially, it turns out there's a significant number of men who suffer the same from women with toxic traits. This is just physical violence, too. It says nothing about who may be more inclined to emotionally or verbally abuse their partners, if there is even a difference in genders. So, gender aside, if we all basically know what toxic is, then why do we stay in these relationships? Or is there something deeper going on here? Ever since I could remember, I felt a sort of mystical, magnetic pull towards people that had some collection of these traits. It's like I was drawn to them. If someone was toxic and my body felt nervous or off around them, I felt this strong attraction to them and this desire to make sure that they were happy enough with me. I would laugh at their self-centered jokes or nod in agreement to their criticisms of other people. I couldn't tear myself away from them until I knew that they were pleased. I want to show you why. In July 2022, Simone Gwendelman and colleagues at the Berlin School of Mind and Brain at Humboldt University, Berlin, studied 62 people and mapped their brain's response using an fMRI machine to get a real-time picture of where the brain lights up during certain events. They knew that when we watch people suffer, we tend to feel distressed as well. This is empathy, or maybe more correctly, sympathy. But what they wanted to test was to see if there's a response when we regulate others' emotions, when we help remove their distress. Turns out, they made an interesting discovery in this part of the brain, the part that directly relates to toxic relationships, and may hold the key to why your best friend can't seem to break up from that jerk. I once had this girlfriend who, let's just say, had a good chunk of those toxic traits. She treated me like garbage, lied, manipulated me, was full of rage and the need for control, was passive-aggressive and dishonestly tried to look like a model citizen in public. But at home, she was terrorizing me with contempt and silent treatment. That's the definition of covert, by the way. Deep down, I really believed if I was just nice enough, or gave her everything she wanted, or completely avoided conflict with her, I tried every form of communication in the book too, or if I tiptoed around her so her good mood was never messed with, then she would finally approve of me. As long as she was happy, I felt okay. And it was a constant dance to not disrupt her fragile mood. A dance to make sure home didn't erupt into emotional chaos. A dance to keep myself from feeling pain. Spoiler alert, this dance is a major clue, and it's a symptom of exactly what Gwendoman found in his fMRI scans. For a person like me, when someone is cold, cruel, and dominating in their interactions with me, if they take a break and just crack a smile, it's like a rush. I did it! I'm flooded with endorphins, maybe oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, all the pleasure hormones. It feels good. Real good. Then, when they take advantage of me again, manipulate me, or show disgust and anger toward me, it's like all the wind was taken out of me. I'm exhausted emotionally, confused, and deeply affected. I feel a strong sense of fear, of obligation to make them happy again, and guilt for not dancing well enough. I blame myself, they blame me. These type of people expect us to regulate their mood, and we expect ourselves to regulate theirs, their emotions. And the more we both go through this dance and things are randomly or occasionally good, then the more our bond to these toxic people is reinforced. Technically speaking, they call this trauma bonding, and it's a consequence of something called intermittent reinforcement. The good times get us literally addicted to this person. But why? In their study, Gwendoman found that these parts of the brain light up when we regulate the emotions of other people in distress. The bad, rageful, or fragile mood we experience in toxic people is distress. And when we enter the dance with them to tiptoe around those moods, to not set them off, that's regulation. That's regulating their emotions for them. Look at what they found. They found that the activated part of the brain is the precuneus region, which implies reduced stress in the one regulating the emotions of the other. And there's a connection between the precuneus region and the ventral tegmental area, which is the brain's reward center. That's really interesting. Here's why. Scientists in other studies have shown that when dopamine is released, when the reward is activated, that it tends to increase the amount of dopamine released the next time this particular reward is triggered. This creates that sense of addiction to something, where you feel a compulsion to have more of whatever is triggering the reward. You're probably thinking, that's crazy, why would anyone ever feel good being treated like crap? Who said they feel good? Addicted, yes. Pleasure? Not necessarily. It's been said, our brain craves familiarity, not safety. This is the key to understanding trauma bonding and the powerful addictive effects of intermittent reinforcement. This neurological addiction creates a sense that we need to earn someone's love. We become human doings, not human beings, doing things to earn love. We don't feel lovable for just being ourselves. This addiction to the dopamine-releasing reward of being treated well from a toxic person creates a sense of fear of their negative mood. Obligation to regulate their mood and walk on eggshells. And guilt that we're not keeping them happy, as if we caused their negative traits. In the mental health world, this is called fog, and it's a trait of codependency. Now, imagine if you were a child being raised by someone with those toxic behaviors we dance around. How would your brain develop? What would you grow up being addicted to? If you never knew anything else, wouldn't you also stay bonded in toxic relationships, even if you objectively knew what toxic behavior is? So what actually happened inside us that made us attracted to toxic as we were developing? One day, when I was sitting with a therapist venting my frustration at the behaviors of that woman I was with, thinking I was just a nice, sensitive, caring victim, she said something that would change everything about how I thought about myself and how I thought about my relationships forever. As she sat there in that Hobby Lobby decor decorated room, leg crossed, notepad on her lap, I can still picture it, she said very casually, "A certain type of person is attracted to someone like that." What? That statement hit me like getting hit by a truck. My brain started racing. My life literally started flashing before my eyes. I could see the events in my life, the people, the toxic people, how I reacted, all my shyness, supposed niceness, my fear, lots of fear, obligation, and guilt. I realized if a certain type of person is attracted to a toxic person like that, then I must be that kind of person. This started a life-changing search for me to understand exactly how I became that type of person, and what that type of person even means. Well, it turns out the type of person is codependent. We'll get to that in a minute, but there's more to it than that. A lot more. Enter Dr. Harville Hendrix, this guy. Dr. Harville Hendrix founded Imago Relationship Therapy. I want to show you something very interesting he found in his practice. Dr. Hendrix found that we are most attracted to someone who has the same unhealthy traits our own parents had. And the funny thing is, our subconscious, in an effort to heal itself, is attracted to exactly that kind of person. A person with the traits we probably least want in our life, the traits that have probably hurt us most in childhood. The brain sees these traits as familiar, so it's attracted to them. It's addicted to them. Dr. Hendrix calls this an imago match. Freud had a term for basically the same thing as well, repetition compulsion. It's a tendency to repeat traumatic patterns. We repeat what we don't repair. Jung also remarks about this concept in his work describing shadow projection. He recognized that the parts of ourselves that we reject, those things that hurt us in childhood maybe, are projected out by the unconscious, and it compels us to select partners who have these rejected parts. What this is all starting to clearly illustrate is that children who grew up with parents who had toxic traits tend to have attachment problems in later life. Attachment trauma in childhood, when our needs aren't met because of the self-serving toxic traits of a parent, creates insecure attachment in later life. Insecure attachment attracts other insecurely attached people. We're attracted to toxic people. And not only attracted, our brains are literally wired to them. And not only are we addicted to them, we may not even realize that their behavior is toxic. I'll show you why we're so blind in just a minute. In these insecurely attached relationships, it often happens that one person is the enabler and the other person is more aggressive in trying to get their needs met. I want to show you this definition of codependency so we can understand this a little better. Codependency is an insecure relationship dynamic where one person, the codependent, is overly reliant on another, often sacrificing their own needs and well-being to support the other person, the supposedly toxic person, who may have an addiction, a personality disorder, or other toxic traits. It's a pattern of enabling self-sacrifice and a focus on the other person's needs to the detriment of one's own. That's really interesting. Let's hear that again. One person, the codependent, is overly reliant on another, often sacrificing their own needs and well-being to support the other person. I mean, clearly that's emotion regulation, and we know what that does. It creates addiction. But it's saying the one doing the regulating is the one overly reliant. The one addicted to the toxic person is the one who relies on the toxic person, the one who needs the toxic person. The toxic person is just the drug, and we are the junkies. So is it really us, the ones who thought we were just victims of the big bad wolf in sheep's clothing? Is it because of us that the whole thing works, that there even is a toxic relationship at all? Well, yes. We're 50% of this kind of relationship. And as long as we're enabling the so-called toxic person, we're pretty toxic too, it turns out, just different. Then we'll continue to stay addicted to the relationship, and they'll continue to use us to get their needs met, over and over. The philosopher Seneca says, all cruelty springs from weakness. They're just as damaged as we are. So, How do we break this cycle then? If we're attracted to toxic people, won't leave them because we're addicted, and the only reason the toxic relationship works at all is because we ourselves have our own toxic traits and we're attracted to these people in the first place. After that fateful day in the therapist's office, when my world was turned completely upside down, I went on a deep inner quest to discover who I really was, where I came from, and how to heal the broken parts of myself so I could finally fulfill that deep inner desire for warm, safe, healthy, reciprocal love. What I discovered was that in order to break the pattern I had repeated so many times and free myself from the bondage of emotional pain in toxic relationships, I had to reintegrate those parts of myself I had rejected and that I was blind to. That's exactly what Jung was talking about with the shadow self. By doing the work of inner discovery and processing of old wounds, we can break the cycle. We can change our fundamental character and grow out of our egotism that is producing our own toxic traits. We can grow a warm, safe, humble, and healthy respect for our own abandoned needs and self. We need to love ourselves the way we want to be loved. In our attachment wounds, we've learned to abandon ourselves to regulate the emotions of someone with toxic behavior. We likely did this same dance with our not-so-healthy parents when we were children. It was likely one of them that taught us how to dance. And it's this very thing that's the reason we can't even recognize toxic behavior sometimes. It's familiar, normal. It's what we were raised in. We can't see it objectively. The 4th century monk, Saint Ephrem the Syrian, says, "A man begins to go astray when he withdraws from humility." So, in order to find ourselves again, we have to do the work of dismantling our ego defenses. We need to learn healthy boundaries so we can say no to false love, toxic love, our brain's addiction to regulating someone's toxic emotions, and yes to healthy, safe love. My point here is just that our childhood wounds hurt us. They were painful, and our egos have been doing everything they can to protect us from the pain. But our subconscious really wants to heal. So the only way to truly give the subconscious what it wants is to help it heal. If we do the work and heal our inner selves, then the subconscious will no longer push us into these imago match relationships, and will finally come home to safe, beautiful, warm, caring, and nurturing love. First, finding it inside ourselves, then being attracted to it, and only it, in others. Now, I know it's not easy, by far, and there's a lot we need to learn to recognize in the process, but trust me, it's worth it.